Now we'll create the chair. I can start by creating a new polygon cube, but I'm going to duplicate one of the legs from the table to start with. I'll hit Command D and I'll pull it out away from the table. Now I know it has to be lower so that the chair could fit under the table theoretically. I'm going to go to an orthographic view, and in my side orthographic view I'll right click and choose vertex. I'm going to scale it from the vertices on the top. Dragging on the Y, I'll give it the height I think I need for the chair to slip under that table eventually. I'm going to go to my perspective view now, and I'll right click and choose object mode, and I'll center the pivot. I might want to scale this a bit, make it thinner all the way around. And before I continue the modeling process, I want to put a bevel on so it looks like it's milled wood, sanded on the edges. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose edge, and I'm going to select all the edges. I'll go to Edit Mesh, Bevel, Attributes, and in the bevel options I'm setting the width for 0.4 and segments for 2. I'm leaving the default depth of 1, and the smooth angle of 30 is also the default. If I were to click Apply, it previews what I've just done and leaves the bevel option window up in case I want to make a change. So I could now hit Command Z and I can make the changes I want here. Had I clicked on bevel, it would give me the same effect, but it closes out the option window. I'm going to right click and go back to object mode. Now I like the way the bevel came out, and I'd like the legs to be beveled like that as well. With Maya, if I were to select a polygon and hit G on the keyboard, you can see that it replicated what I had put on the leg. And I can do that for all of them. I'll hit G for each leg, and I might even do the tabletop. So whenever I perform a function with Maya, if I need to do it multiple times, I simply select the geometry and hit G on the keyboard to repeat the previous function. Now that I have one front leg, I need to fashion a back leg which will have the backrest on it. I'll select the leg and I'll go to my orthographic side view. Hitting W on the keyboard, I'll hit Command D to duplicate, and I'll place it into position. Now I want to give this height, so I'll right click and choose vertex. Marquee selecting the top vertices of the polygon, I'll hit W and I'll give it some height. Returning to my object mode, I'll go to my perspective view, and I've got something like this. Now I want these chairs to have a little bit more finesse or shape to them. I've introduced an edge loop tool, and the edge loop tool looks like a window pane with a series of little orange lines through it. To get that, I held down Command Shift and I went to Mesh Tools and I clicked on Insert Edge Loop. If you find yourself with too many tools on your shelf, you can always right click on the one you want to delete and choose Delete. I'm going to go to my orthographic side view again. When introducing the edge, you'll want to do that in an orthographic view, and particularly in this instance. Clicking on the Edge Loop tool, I'll now click on one of the vertical polygon lines I see here. And when I do, it introduces a brown line. I can now hit W on the keyboard, and I can move that wherever I'd like it to go. I'm going to put one that's equal to the height of the leg in the front, and then I'll click on the Edge Loop tool once again and put one in the middle. Now I want the top vertices and the bottom vertices to flare to the right to get a bit of a shape. I'll hit W on the keyboard, I'll right click and choose Vertex. I can select the top one and I'll move that out, and I'll select the bottom one and move it in that direction. Now, it looks kind of blocky, but if I were to hit 3 on the keyboard to get the proxy, this is the results I would have if I chose to run a smooth polygon tool after the modeling is completed. I'm going to hit 1 on the keyboard to go back to the actual state of the geometry. It makes it easier on the computer, and you can see very accurately where your vertices lie on your geometry. I want to tweak the one on the front a little bit so it goes better with the one in the back. Returning to my side view, I'll right click and go back to my object mode for this leg. Select this leg, click on the insert edge loop, and again I'll navigate in so I can click on a vertical line, and I'll zoom back a bit, hit W, and now I'll pull that one in a little bit. If I hit 3 on the keyboard, shift select the leg in the back and hit 3. This is what I would get had I run a smooth polygon tool at the conclusion of the modeling process. Once again, to be careful, I'm going to hit 1 on the keyboard and return back to the original geometry state. Now that I have the front leg and the back leg created, I need another set for the other side. I've shift selected and hit Command D to duplicate. I'll return to the perspective view, or if I wanted to, I could simply go to the top view and separate out that duplicate to give it the width I want the chair to have. And this is what I've got so far. Next, I need to make the seat for the chair itself. Going to the top view, I can now hold down the space bar, go to Create, Polygon Primitives, Cube, and I'll start to drag a footprint of the seat itself. And then I'll go to my perspective view, and I'll click and drag up to give it a little bit of thickness. So I have all my axes represented here. I'll kind of move it up into position, generally where I want it to be eventually. Now I can already see from my side view it's a little thick, so I'll scale it, hitting R. And usually a chair is tapered towards the back and wider towards the front. Before I actually play with the shape of this though, I want to bevel it so it's softer, kind of like what I did with the tabletop and the legs. With the geometry selected, I'll right click and choose Edge. I'll marquee select all my edges. Going up to Edit Mesh, Bevel, Attributes. I want this to be a little rounder than the wood. So I'll change the width to 0.8. I'll hit Return. I'll leave the segments at 2 because I want to keep the polygon count low, and I can always smooth all the geometry at the end of the modeling process. Clicking on Apply, I now have a surface that will serve the purpose I want. Now I'm going to use the Edge Loop tool to alter it so it's a little wider in the middle. Clicking on the Edge Loop tool, I'll zoom in and I'll put an edge here. Hitting R on the keyboard, I can now pull that out. And if I hit 3 on the keyboard, this is pretty much the results I would have. I'll return to the object mode for the seat. And now I need to make the backrest. Now rather than create a new polygon cube, I'm going to duplicate the seat and start to put it into position and then model it. I'll do that by returning to my side view once again. I'll hit Command D and I'll move it up. Hitting E on the keyboard, I'm going to rotate this by I so that I have the results I want. Now I'm going to go to my front view. And in my front view, I'm going to hit the scale tool and I'll start to taper it and change the position perhaps. If I go to my perspective view, I have something like this. Now that should be thinner than the seating area here, so click on the scale tool and I'll taper it. If I were to do this in my front view, I could also move it back so it's against the structure of the legs. Now with a chair, The back always has a bit of a curvature to fit the contour of our back. So I'm going to use the edge loop tool, and I'll introduce an edge right in the middle. Hitting W on the keyboard, I can now pull it back. And if I hit 3 on the keyboard, I now have a bit of a roundness to it. I want more than one chair, but I would probably put the color on it and then replicate it once I've got what I want. That would apply to anything with a texture as well.